This is section 816, finding the missing angle using the three basic trig ratios. So we're going to use inverse functions to determine our unknown angles. When we use trig ratios such as sine, cosine, or tangent, we compare the sides of a triangle from a given angle. So we've already established this, right? Our sine is the opposite to the hypotenuse ratio. Now, to find the angle, you can actually use the same ratio, but you're going to use the inverse of the ratio to be able to find it. So the inverse of the sine ratio, we also call arcsine. Another way of writing it is sine inverse. That's going to be, in this case, 5/13. But the idea of this inverse helps you find the angle. Now, yes, sine and sine inverse are inverses of each other. They will cancel out. And so this is how we say it, sine inverse of a ratio, or arcsine. You're going to see both. They're interchangeable in its language. They basically mean the same thing, but just know that we say arcsine or sine inverse, cosine inverse, tangent inverse. It's important that we use that language. So let's look at a few examples here. So it says find theta in degrees. Okay, so we still find our ratio. So we have opposite, we have hypotenuse. Opposite hypotenuse is my sine ratio. So I can establish sine theta equals opposite over hypotenuse. So I use SOHCAHTOA. Now to get theta by itself, this is where we apply the inverse. So we use the sine inverse. Now it's a left-handed operation, so you write it on the left side. And then the sine inverse and the sine are going to cancel out. Now, once you get the theta by itself, that's the angle, now you just enter that in your calculator. So sine inverse of 20/29. You simplify that, and so that's going to be 43.6 degrees. Let's look at another one. So I have my adjacent, I have my hypotenuse. So I'm going to say the cosine of P equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Cosine inverse to both sides. So I get P equals cosine inverse of 15/17. So now we can enter that in our calculator. So cosine inverse of 15/17. And so that's going to be 28.07 degrees. Next one. From x, I have an opposite and I have adjacent. So that's going to be TOA. So I have tangent of x equals opposite over adjacent. Now I can take the tangent inverse to both sides. And so that's going to be, so tangent inverse of 15 divided by 20. So that's going to be 36.87 degrees. And the very last one, I'll just set it up, but we don't have to worry about the calculation. This is opposite and hypotenuse, so that's going to be sine again. So I'm going to say the sine of beta equals opposite over hypotenuse. Sine inverse to both sides. 7. Don't know where I got 17. And then that's just going to equal 0.5. So let's look at a few applications here. So a ladder leans against a building, forming a 58-degree angle with the ground. The base of the ladder is 13 feet from the building. Determine the length of the ladder. So we have our building. A ladder is going to lean against it, and it creates a 58-degree angle with the ground. So I need to know what the length of the ladder is. And it says that the ladder is 13 feet from the building. So in this instance, I have adjacent and I have hypotenuse. So that's going to be cosine. So I'm going to say the cosine of 58 equals 13 over x. Solve for x. Get x by itself. I'm trying to find a missing side, so I can multiply both sides by x, divide both sides by cosine of 58. So multiply both sides by x, And so then you get x cosine of 58 equals 13. Divide both sides by cosine of 58. And then enter that in your calculator, and so you're going to get 24.53 feet. Next, a photographer shines a camera light at a painting, forming an angle of 42 degrees with the camera platform. If the light is 53 feet from the wall where the painting hangs, how high is the painting from the platform? So let's think about it. So a photographer shines a light on a camera at a painting, forming an angle of 42 degrees with the camera and the platform. The light is 53 feet from the wall where the painting hangs. So that's 53 feet. How high is the painting from the platform? So we need to know this distance here. How high is it from the platform? So again, opposite and adjacent, that's tangent. So I can say tangent of 42 equals x over 53. Multiply those sides by 53. Enter that in your calculator, and you're going to get 47.721 feet. So what did we learn today? Today we talked about sine, cosine, and tangent inverse, and that sine and sine inverse, those are inverses of each other, and so they will cancel out, and we use the inverse ratios to be able to find the angles. And so that's what the inverse ratios represent. They represent the angle of whatever sine, cosine, tangent, whatever it is. So it represents an angle, and that's very important. If you see the inverse language, it means you're finding an angle. If I just look at something and it says, if I just saw this random tangent inverse of 2 over 5, if I just saw that, my brain immediately is thinking, it's talking about an angle. This does conclude our lesson. If you have any other questions, please leave them in the comments.